Hey everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from June 2nd, 2023, and I'm recording this on November 30th, 2023. As always, I give you those dates so you know when this information is actually relevant because the market is always moving and changing. As you will see as we go through this 6 months difference in prices for these books. As always, we're looking back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 and the Comic Tom Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week. This week we got 18 books to talk about, a decent variety of reasons here why things are on the list. So let's dig in and see what we can learn about what books were hot then, what made them hot, how have they changed it, how have they maintained in the market or have they not, and what reasons might have allowed them to maintain or fall back over the last 6 months. So, without further ado, let's get started. First up, we have Amazing Spider-Man, the movie, #1. This was on the list last week. This Andrew Garfield, Emma Stone cover was really hot back then because they'd announced another Andrew Garfield signing at CGC. That was what was driving this. 60 to 80 for raw copies back then. A 9.8 went for $1,000, which is just, that's definitely a dumpster fire. Last time we talked about this, we talked about last week, it was like 60. It was up a little bit further. Now it's a $20 book. No really recent 9.8 sales. Yeah, this is a dumpster fire if you didn't get the signature, but even if you did, the signature books aren't really going for anything. The ones that they're trying to sell, and yeah, you're probably not making any money here, but anyway, people were chasing it. It doesn't appear like a great investment. My guess is he's done 2 of these. There'll probably be another one. Now would be the time that you would want to buy it when there's not some sort of signature event going on. All right, with that, we're going to move into our one option news book this week, and that was Butterfly, #1. Basically, an Amazon show for this series got greenlit to proceed, so that's what was driving this book. Back then, raw copies were only averaging like $4, but a 9.8 went for $195. Now, just a $15 book, but that's one sale. 9.8, so $75 and $155. So definitely a trap on the 9.8 side. You could say it's up on the raw side, but with one sale, hard to really judge that, and there are listings less than the 15. So, yeah, we're just going to call that overall down in a trap. Not necessarily. We'll see if this, how soon this actually becomes something. It was greenlit back in the spring, but there probably hasn't been any work done on it because of all the strikes and everything. Next, we're going to move into covers. First of our covers is World Tree, #1. The Peach Momoko second print, 1 per store variant. This was going for, World Tree was a super hot series back then. This book was going for big money, $75 to $100, which the 1 per store is usually about 25, or is usually equivalent of 1 in 25. So yeah, 75 to 100, that's big money, but it did not hold. There are no recent sales. Listings all start at 75 plus. So you could say, well, maybe it's just down a little bit. I'm putting this as a trap because you can't even get it sold at all. My guess is it would have to come down significantly to be sold. Maybe one would sell at 65. I kind of doubt it if it's not selling at 75. All right, next we have the Rocketeer #1. This is the Adam Hughes 1 in 10 Virgin variant. So we'd had that Rocketeer Kickstarter hit the list not that long ago. This was actually the start of the main series. It was a 1 in 10. Back then, this 1 in 10 was going for 20 to 30. Now it's basically going for the same range. A couple of sales a little higher, but overall right in that same range. 9.8 is a little over $100. So we're going to go steady and worth it on this one. Could argue maybe up worth it, but for the most part, it's pretty steady. Most of the sales are in the same range as back then, with just a couple a little more. So that kind of fits that worth it category. All right, next we have DC Pride #1, the Jen Bartel 1 in 50. There's also a foil version of this cover, but the 1 in 50 is the one that was hitting the list back then. For not even double ratio, usually not a great sign, but we're gonna call this steady worth it. You could argue with me on this because it's based on one sale. The one sale that we've had recently is right at the same value we were talking about back then. So I guess worth it, but there's only one sale, so you could argue maybe that yeah, people still aren't really to pay that consistently. All right, with that, we're gonna move on. We got Harley Quinn, number 30, the David Nakayama 1 in 25. Nakayama has just continued to become more and more popular over the last couple of years. He's got a lot of covers that people have been chasing recently. This 1 in 25 is going for almost triple ratio, which is usually a good sign. But this one's still backed up. Actually, I probably should have put trap on this at 40 to 60. I don't know why I wrote I'll be back. And I know I've already made the slide, so yeah. So it says I'll be back. Probably should be trap at 40 to 60 now. 9.8, 76, and 260. 2 sales. Big difference in the value on those sales. So probably the real value is probably just over 100 somewhere, 100, 150. But yeah, so wide spacing there on the sales. But yeah, this book definitely backed up on the raw side, and you could definitely do better than you could back then. But still really good for 1 in 25 at 40 to 60. All right, next we have Ghost Spider number 2. The cover that put Peach Momoko on the map. This is the 1 in 25 from back in 2019. And a 9.8 hit an all-time high at 1,600, which is why it hit the list. Only one recent sale I could find on this one on eBay. A 9.0 went for $595. All the 9.8 asking prices are $2,000 plus. So we're gonna still put this as steady and worth it. If a 9.0 is still drawing $600 and a 9.8 probably still would draw $15, there's just nobody listing it for in that range. So yeah, interesting. I pointed it out back then. I pointed it out again. Her first appearance goes for less than this cover generally. So there you go. Even at a 9.8. All right, next we're going to move out of covers, and we got a little buzz. We got Micronauts number 1. This was hitting the list for the same reason that we talked about ROM. Space Night last week is Marvel announced that they were going to collect it in an Omni. So that was coming out. Maybe it's already out at this point. I don't think so yet, but I'm not sure on that. But they announced that there was an Omni coming. Caused us hit the list. Raw books were 20, 9.8s were 140. Both prices way down from some of the buzz when people thought Micronauts were going to be in movies, or there was going to be a version of them in the Ant-Man movie. There was, still way down from that. And the book is backed up since. Now it's like a 5 to 20 book, 9.8, a little bit less at 125. So definitely an I'll be back here for Micronauts. Next, we have XMen Adventures 92, number 1. So this basically had to do with the voice casting announcements for the revival of the 90s X-Men cartoon, which included several of the original voice actors. So that people were pretty excited about that. Caused us to hit the list. Raw copies were going for an average of 18, so kind of that $15, $20 range. 9.6 sold for 60. Now it's a 5 to 20 book. 9.6, 55. 9.8s are going for just under 200. Overall, and I'll be back. We'd put this on just on the raw side, which is where most of the sales are. But still gonna get this at some point, but I'm not sure exactly. Animation takes a little longer. My guess is we're probably getting this in 24 sometime. We'll see. Next, we're gonna move into a couple of MCU sort of related books. This is Marvel Preview number 2, the first appearance of Maria Castle, and this had to do with they were bringing the Punisher back to the MCU, so that people were chasing her first appearance, even though she doesn't last very long in any Punisher story. So I'm not sure exactly why people were specking on this, but I guess it's just his origin. I don't expect them to tell it again. It's been told multiple times in the movies and in the TV show and everything else. Do we really need another Punisher origin story at this point? It's kind of like telling the Batman origin again. Anyway, raw copies 75 to 100 back then. Now 30 to 100. 9.4, 325 is only the most recent highest grade sale. We're going to call it steady, and I'll be back, because the nice copies are still in that $75 to $100 range, but there are a lot of $50, $60, $40, $30 sales. Also, probably more sales under that. But so we'll say, and I'll be back, but the high end is still where it was at. All right, next we have our other MCU kind of rumor books, which was Amazing Spider-Man number 238, first appearance of Hobgoblin. There's still people specking that Ned is going to at some point be the Hobgoblin. I think he made a post or something making a joke, and because he was working out, people were like jumped on it again, and then he had to clarify after this. But caused this book to hit the list again. Raw copies were 2 to 600, 9.6, 900, 1100. This book has come way back from that. Raw copies, even the nicest one we found recently, with 75 to 400. So a significant step back on the top end and the low end on raw copies. 9.65 to 850. That's definitely in trap range on a 9.6. Definitely backed up a bunch. So yeah, I mean, he backed off. He was like, no, it was just making some fun comments. We're not actually working on anything, which it turned out they really haven't been. Based on Tom Holland's recent comments, they're just now starting to even think about it. So yeah, people have definitely backed off of this book. Still a great book though. All right, with that, we're moving all into stuff related to Sony Spiders. First up, we have the one book that's not related to Across the Spider-Verse. This is Marvel Superhero Secret Wars number 7, the first appearance of Julia Carpenter. You'll know this is a book that has been hitting the list the last 2 weeks because of the Madam Web trailer. Back then, it was because we got casting confirmation that Sydney Sweeney was playing Julia Carpenter in the Madam Web movie. Raw copies back then jumped up to $20 on average, 9.8, 170. Right now, it is up in straight cash compared to 6 months ago. Although a month ago, it was probably an I'll be back. That's just the way the timing works here. But the trailer's dropped in the last couple weeks. Now it's a $30+ book raw, $225 to $250 on the 9.8. Although I think it's starting to slow down and come back a little bit already from where it was in the last couple weeks. But yeah, timing is everything, and this is a cool example of it because, yeah, a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, this was definitely a down and I'll be back from back in the spring. Now it's up in a straight cash. So 6 months from now, depending on how well the movie's received, it could be down or up, but again, it'll move again. For some reason, I forgot to talk about these next 2 books while I was recording. First of those is Spider-Man 2099 meets Spider-Man from 1995. Their first meeting, of course, this hit the list because of Across the Spider-Verse. Back then, raw copies were 15, 9.8, 120. No recent 9.8 sales. Now it's a $5 to $20 book, so definitely a down and an I'll be back. Book that was on the list last week for basically around the same prices. Next, we have Web of Spider-Man 118, first Ben Reilly as Scarlet Spider. Back then, raw copies were 100, 9.8, 900. This is still kind of post Dark Web event, that kind of stuff. Had this book hot in the spring. Now, raw copies are 35 to 100. 9.8s are way down at 330 to 650. So another book that's down. All right, next we have SpiderWoman number 1. From 1978, the first solo title for Jessica Drew, SpiderWoman. This had to do with Across the Spider-Verse, as we got a version in the movie. A little different version than we had seen, but yeah. Back then, raw copies were 20 to 50, 9.8, 200. And this book is now 10 to 50 on the raw side, so basically the same range. But 9.8s have actually moved up 3 to 325. We're going to call up and worth it as opposed to straight cash. Obviously, the 9.8 is straight cash from 6 months ago, but most of the sales are on the raw side, and are on lower graded copies. So we're going to go with up and worth it. Next, we have Peter Parker, Spectacular Spider-Man number 98, first appearance of the Spot. Obviously, this had to do with the movie. Back then, $30 for raw copies. 9.8 is 200. Now it's basically just a step down from that. 10 to 30, 175 to 200. Just an I'll be back. Just a little better deals than back then. But this book is held. I know we're going to get the Spot in the final movie as well. He's going to be the main villain, or part of the villainy at least. We got a lot of potential villains in the final one. But yeah, this one's held better than I would have expected 6 months after the movie. So next we have Ultimate Fallout 4, first appearance of Miles Morales. Back then the book had kind of dropped off quite a bit. The movie caused it to jump back up to prices more similar to what it was during the boom. Rock copies 500 on average, 9.82 thousand. And this has taken a significant step back since. There are a lot of these, and I've always wondered about really whether it could sustain some of the prices it was getting to for a while. Even though Miles is a great character, it's a book a lot of people want. There's also just a lot of them. Now it's a $200 to $500 book, 9.8, 13 to 1500. So this book is definitely taking a significant step back. We will see. Obviously, we're going to get more Miles. This book will probably jump back up again. So now's probably not a bad time to start looking for deals if you're interested in this book and have never gotten it. Then our last book is SpiderMan 2, number 1, the first appearance of the evil Miles. Mild spoilers here for Across, as we got an evil version in the multiverse. Raw copies back then were 20, 9.8, 100. Now it's a 10 to 20. Although, I say that, this is a book that's kind of all over the place. Most of the sales are 10 to 20. There was a $45 sale for a raw copy and a $60 sale for a raw copy. It mixed in there as well. So, yeah, still going to call this, on average, a down, and I'll be back. I'm not sure why people were paying that much for those two when there was a lot of nice copies selling for 20 or under. 9.8, 55, all the way to 175. So a big range on this. People are spending odd choices here in the buying. Is you can get these books for cheaper, and yet people are spending some of the higher value stuff here. Not sure what's exactly going on with this book, but overall, I'd call it an I'll be back. It's one I would definitely look for a deal on. All right, that is this week's video. We had a bunch of Sony Spider stuff, a little bit of MCU, a little bit of comic buzz, some covers. I want to thank you guys for watching, and we will catch you next time. Later.